This story is completely crazy. He bought a gold ring for 10 yuan. In a world where food is the only strong currency, that ring transported him to a zombie apocalypse with 2 buckets of tomatoes. Yes, that's right, tomatoes. In this world, he realized that tomatoes were worth more than gold. Now, together with 2 sisters, he must turn this wealth into strength to survive in this chaotic world. Amid the storm and the city's destruction, monsters roam the streets. Soon after, a young man wakes up tied up in an unknown place, where a woman asks him what his name is. Suddenly, the sound of a belt snapping makes his eyes widen. Then the woman stretches out the object and questions him about why he invaded their base. Still immobilized, the young man replies that his name is Song Chao, and that he was just passing through the area. However, not believing him, the woman tells him to stop stalling and save both of their time. She then points to a girl eating tomatoes and asks why he would carry something so precious with monsters everywhere. At that moment, the other girl spits out what she was eating and asks if he injected anesthetic or something similar into the tomatoes. Right after the question, the girl starts coughing non-stop while the other 2 just watch the scene. As soon as she recovers, she tells her sister Shen Jiao that she already tested the tomatoes and they only have pesticide residue. That the woman, now called Shen Jiao, just places her hand on her forehead at her sister's comment. Taking advantage of the distraction, the boy asks if the 2 sisters could please untie him first. In response, he only receives a whip strike. Next, Shen Jiao leans over him and warns that after falling into the hands of the dude from West City, he shouldn't try any more tricks. Finally, she stares at him and tells him not to think that a pretty face will stop him from being attacked, before demanding that he tell the truth. From the corner of his eye, Song Chao observes the woman's reaction. Immediately, Shen Jiao grabs him by the collar and yells, asking where the tomatoes came from and if there were more. Upon hearing the question, he just realizes that he has truly traveled to an apocalyptic place. At that moment, the young man remembers how dangerous and cautious he had to be while traveling alone, finding the tomatoes next to a creature and almost being killed by another before being saved. Suddenly, his body is thrown to the ground once again. Then Shen Jiao accuses him of plotting something and demands to go with him toward the attack. From afar, Song Chao watched the enemy group advance. Shen Jiamei then warned her sister that someone was coming toward them. The young girl looked at her weapon with a worried expression. She soon realized the ammo still hadn't finished reloading. Because of that, she admitted she wasn't good at close or mid-range combat. But remembering a piece of advice from Shen Jian, she decided nothing gets solved without firepower. Next, a combat drone system activated on her suit. Several missiles were launched into the night sky. Even with the attack, the girl said that still wasn't enough firepower. A group of thugs charged across the wasteland among the debris. The leader shouted that they needed to eliminate the sniper on the hill as quickly as possible and to watch for attacks. One of the men in heavy armor looked up at the sky, confused by the warning. At that moment, an energy beam hit him directly, making him explode, while another thug was struck in the back. One of the gang's women then shouted to the boss that Kongzi's head had been blown off. She then identified the weapon as a precision rifle and ordered them to find the source of the shots. Soon the woman was also hit by another energy beam that disintegrated her instantly. The group leader cursed as he saw another of his members being eliminated like that. Looking toward the hill, he tried to figure out what the hell was attacking them. The answer came when he spotted Shen Jiamei with a levitation cannon and drones floating around her. One of the levitation drones began charging its energy for another shot. The man then panicked upon realizing that kind of weapon had been sold to a civilian. With a confident smile, the girl prepared for the next attack. The gang boss could only scream at what was about to happen. The drones in the sky glowed brightly before firing together. With one last curse, the remaining thugs were swallowed by a massive energy beam. Shen Jiamei then smiled and said she knew her sister had been right all along. Back at Linjing base, the night carried on normally under the city lights. In an alley, the informant lit his pipe to smoke peacefully. He soon took a long drag and slowly exhaled the smoke from his mouth. Suddenly, a figure approached and asked what a snakehead was doing there. The man accused him of selling the information about the rich boy and asked what the deal was with Tiger. With that, he revealed he had heard that Tiger was a slave trader from the Southern District. The informant confirmed that the Southern District was known for kidnappings and slavery, but said he never risked getting into that business. With a grin, he explained it would be a waste to die when he could use the supplies to have fun. Meanwhile, on the road, Tiger was standing back up amid the fire and his fallen men. Eventually, he noticed a large crowd approaching for battle. Soon Shen Jian rushed forward at high speed and leaped over the remaining henchmen. With that, Tiger concluded that the two flowers of the west side were no ordinary opponents. With a smile, the warrior said it had been a long day of ambushes and it was time to play, showing why she was known as the Flower King. Shen Jian began her attack with two quick, precise shots. Next, she took down two more henchmen while counting each of her targets. With a spin in midair, the warrior dodged incoming bullets and cut down another enemy on the ground. She then kept moving, dodging the projectiles as she counted the six. As soon as a thug fired, she landed and eliminated two others before they could react. With that, Tiger shouted for his men to kill her the moment she touched the ground. The fighter then activated the double jump system on her boots. A propulsion blast launched her back into the air, out of the enemy's reach. One of the henchmen shouted in shock as he saw her jump in midair. At the peak of the jump, she aimed her weapon down. Shen Jian landed with a heavy impact right in front of a masked thug. The man only managed to curse at her before the direct clash began. With a quick move, she blocked the blade of an enemy who tried to attack her. She then pierced through the mask of another thug with her weapon. To finish, she leaped and struck the last standing man, completing her count of 9. One of the survivors screamed in terror at the scene while a voice commented it was a good warm-up. The brutality of the fight left Song Chao frozen as Shen Jian said she hadn't even thanked them for showing up. Tiger's eyes filled with rage at the provocation. The woman then thanked everyone for helping her test her new combat equipment. With blood dripping down her face, she finished by saying they had all done a great job. The story then went back to 30 minutes before the confrontation. At that moment, Song Chao asked if someone might be waiting for them on the road ahead. As a message came in, the older sister concluded they would be targeted, and the younger one suggested her attack plan. With a smile, Jemmy agreed with the long-range support strategy. Right after, Joan told the young master to stay with her sister because she couldn't count on his combat skills. The plan was to use the car as bait to draw the ambush fire and catch them off guard. Still unsure, the young man asked if that was really necessary and suggested taking maybe tour. At that instant, the woman demanded to know what he was talking about. Pointing her finger, the strategist made him listen. The bandits were there to rob him. Their intention was to take his property, sell his meat, enslave his soul, and take his life. Given that, she asked if it wasn't necessary to kill the scum trying to rob, enslave, and murder him. The logical conclusion, according to her, was that their only choice was to eliminate them. Back in the present, the fight continued with Joan blocking a strike and kicking an enemy. Amid several opponents, the fighter moved with agility while shooting. Her shots continued in rapid succession against the remaining thugs. One of them fired repeatedly, but cursed when he saw the bullets couldn't pierce her armor. Meanwhile, the young woman slid across the ground, dodging bullets amid the gunfire. She then hid behind a rock to escape the enemy fire. When she noticed her weapon was out of ammo, She simply sat down and asked if she wasn't being a bit dramatic. Then the thug in heavy armor shoved his companion aside and yelled at him to move. Right after, he aimed a huge cannon at her and roared for her to go to hell. The strategist's expression changed as she realized the danger approaching. Almost at the same time, another man with a heavy machine gun started firing, creating a curtain of fire. The rock serving as her cover was struck by a huge explosion. While cursing, the young woman shielded her face from the flying debris. Amid the attack, she activated a kinetic shield to defend herself. The energy field blocked the barrage of bullets coming her way. One of the bandits laughed, thinking she was dead, as a huge blast erupted behind the barrier. After the detonation, one of the men declared the job was finally done. The group's leader then ordered them to go find her body in the smoke. Suddenly, a beam of light hit the armored thug in the chest. The attack disintegrated him completely before he could scream. From afar, Jamai reminded them not to forget about the long-range cannon. With a smile, John praised her sister for the great teamwork. Finally, the warrior stepped out of the smoke and began firing at the remaining henchmen. Thus, one of the last henchmen screamed in pain as he was hit by one of the shots. Soon another man cursed when he saw his weapon couldn't hit her through the shield. Amid the fire, Tiger also cursed as he noticed his men were being defeated. With that, the leader shouted for her to go to hell and fired his weapon at his opponent. The projectiles flew at high speed, but the fighter managed to dodge in time. Then a targeting system activated on her visor to track the enemy fire. With an acrobatic leap, the warrior dodged the shots and landed on the ground. Seeing this, Jemmy screamed her sister's name in total despair. Song Chao also reacted in shock, saying it wasn't possible. Tiger let out a sigh of relief and began laughing at the situation. However, Joan used the momentum to spin in the air while the enemy shouted her name. Right after, she landed sliding across the ground to block the enemy's armed arm. Then she fired her weapon point-blank directly into his arm. The leader was stunned, not understanding how that was possible. Without hesitation, the young woman kept shooting repeatedly at the opponent's arm. As one of the thugs shouted for Tiger to duck, another gang member was struck by a shot. With her helmet activated, the warrior aimed her weapon after wounding the enemy. Then she turned and asked if their boss's name was really Tiger. While the man was on the ground, she taunted him not to be shy and to fight back. One of the bandits looked terrified at his fallen brother, not understanding the situation. Holding an even bigger weapon, the fighter called out for whoever was hiding to come out and play. Then she asked if they weren't going to try robbing them again, since hiding wouldn't earn them anything. Hearing that, the wounded next to Tiger told him to leave, saying they weren't fat sheep. Realizing they had walked into a trap, the two fled, concluding it was a wolf in sheep's clothing. After their escape, the battlefield was left covered in fire and the bodies of the defeated henchmen. None of the men who stayed to fight survived the confrontation. With her weapon in hand, the fighter stared at the horizon and wondered if the others had fled, while her helmet scanned the area. Soon a voice called for her in the silence. It was Jiamei running toward her with Song Chao right behind. With a smile, the warrior turned to respond to her younger sister's call. Suddenly, she fell backward, fainting into her companion's arms. Seeing this, the young man rushed over and asked what was wrong. The younger girl realized her sister's armor had been pierced by special bullets. The projectile had gone through the protection, and luckily the remaining enemies had fled. Even injured, Joan suggested they return to Linjiang first. Back at the base, she asked to be taken to Dr. Xu. Soon, a woman in a lab coat appeared, the right person to handle that kind of wound. Inside the surgery room, the doctor remarked that it was a rare scene to witness. She went on to say the patient also had her moments of weakness. The doctor then teased that it was the first time she had seen her in the hospital for misjudging her shield's strength. With a sarcastic smile, Eva Jing of Linjiang-based private hospital said she almost laughed at the situation. Lying on the table, the fighter simply told the doctor to shut up. The doctor then asked who could have ammo strong enough to pierce level 2 armor, and the patient replied it was just bad luck. Next, the doctor asked if it was true she had fallen in love with a rich, stupid man. Joan admitted there was no point denying it and asked about the others. The doctor reassured her about her sister, but said the boy seemed more interested in the capsules. Apparently, he had never undergone body enhancement before and everything seemed new to him. With that, the wounded woman wondered who the hell that boy was. With a smile, she just said nobody knew the truth. Soon after, Xu Jing suggested she should have bought a rechargeable battery or a shield module for the new equipment. Embarrassed, the patient just watched as the surgical instruments were prepared. A little later, the doctor asked if she wanted anesthesia, but the woman, grumbling in pain, said maybe not. Even in pain, Juan refused the anesthesia, explaining it took time to regain sensation. She added that a big show was about to happen and she didn't want to miss it. The doctor just listened to the excuse and prepared for the procedure. Then Xu Jing scolded her and warned she would remove the bullet, but she would need to rest for 2 hours to recover. The doctor then called the patient's name upon noticing she wasn't paying attention. With a blank stare, the warrior only gave a vague, nonsensical reply. With that, mechanical arms appeared to restrain her while the doctor shouted that she couldn't be thinking about food. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a bar was completely empty and silent. Suddenly, Tiger was thrown hard onto a table, breaking it on impact. Right after, Jaime ran to support him while the other companion watched the scene. She then ordered the man to get help and medicine immediately. The young man ran to the back, shouting that the medicine box was there and asking where everyone was. At the same time, the girl tried to calm Tiger, asking him to be patient because the medicine was coming. Wounded on the ground, the leader could only mutter that they were idiots. At that moment, a figure approached and asked if they couldn't see what was wrong. From afar, the companion noticed there were no more caretakers at the base. Jaime turned her face toward the voice, trying to understand the situation. The mysterious person revealed that everyone there were invaders while pointing a weapon at them. Right after, the young man came across one of the intruders wearing a white protective suit. Suddenly, several figures in identical suits appeared and surrounded Jaime and the wounded Tiger. One of the intruders grabbed the woman's hair and slammed her face hard against the ground. Even immobilized, she kept screaming her ally's name, but was ordered to shut up. With difficulty, the wounded man turned to the leading figure and asked what this meant. Finally, a man with a pipe revealed himself in front of a door, accompanied by more guards. Tiger and his companions were now completely surrounded by the group of invaders. Even while captured, he demanded to know why the man was in his territory and what his intentions were. The group's leader just stared at him with a mocking smile. Then he knelt down and told Tiger not to worry about the situation. Next, he stepped closer, saying he could explain everything that was happening. With a finger raised, the invader declared that everything could be summed up in a single sentence. He then revealed that the real problem was that they had gone after Shenjian. The revelation left Tiger and his companion completely shocked. Outraged, the young man accused him of having leaked the information, but the leader only responded with mockery. As the man began shouting about how many of his people had died, a guard pointed a gun to his head. He went on to explain that because they had targeted Joan, the other 3 bosses of Linjing base were now demanding an explanation from the southern district. Upon hearing that, Tiger could only mutter a single word. Then the invader revealed that the lone wolf had been submerged in cement and killed. The man continued, saying that since some shot out of the dealership at high speed. The vehicle screeched around a tight corner, tires squealing. Accelerating even more, the car disappeared on the city's horizon. With his hands steady on the wheel, he focused completely on the road. As he drove, the young man muttered the name Xiuxiu aloud. On the phone, Zhao Yu explained that a wealthy man with a bad reputation had been pursuing Xiuxiu, but she had rejected him. She then revealed that the man offered her money to go to a karaoke bar, asking her not to tell the family. Hearing this, Savon Chow clenched his teeth as the friend admitted she found this situation inappropriate. Already inside the car, he immediately asked Zhao Yu if she knew where they went. Once he got the answer, the vehicle sped up and drifted through a corner at high speed. With a determined expression, he stayed focused on the road ahead. Soon after, he stopped in front of the Heaven and Earth karaoke building. As he entered, the receptionists greeted him at the front desk. One of the employees tried to get his attention, pointing toward him. Ignoring her, the young man simply leaped over the counter while the receptionist shouted for him to stop. He ran down the hallway, ignoring the pleas for him not to barge in like that. As he advanced, his eyes scanned from side to side. His search led him to stop in front of a specific door. Without hesitation, he threw the door open and shouted, "Song Wengxiu." Inside, a burly man was holding the girl by her arms. Startled, she recognized him and called him brother. His hand trembled on the doorframe as he started questioning her. He demanded an explanation for what was going on in that place. The scene widened, revealing the luxurious interior of the karaoke room. Several men sat around the couches, staring at him. The man who had been holding the girl turned and asked who he was. Song Wengxiu then also asked what her brother was doing there. With a grin, the thug snapped his fingers and called him brother-in-law. Hearing that, the young man's gaze hardened as the man said he'd arrived just in time. Then the thug ordered him to stand there and watch as they taught his sister a lesson. Turning his back, the young man repeated brother-in-law with disdain. Immediately, his sister screamed for him to run and call the police. One of the men stepped forward with a smirk, telling him to stay still so they wouldn't have to chase him. Before he could react, a fist came flying toward his face. In an instant, Song Chow countered with a direct punch that sent the man crashing to the floor. The thug lay on the carpet with his face bruised. The scene left both the gang leader and Song Wengxiu completely stunned. The other two henchmen quickly charged at him at the same time. Watching them, the young man noticed how slow their movements were. He even wondered if they were just pretending to fight. Taking advantage of an opening, he landed a punch on the first opponent's face. Then he knocked out the second man, questioning if this was the power of genetic modification. Leaving the two unconscious on the ground, he turned and apologized briefly. With an aura forming around him, he faced the leader and asked what he had said earlier. As night fell, the scene shifted to a quiet city street. Outside, Song Wengxiu watched her brother, who seemed to be processing what had just happened. As they walked, he called her Comrade Song Wengxiu, and she asked what was wrong. In a flashback, the girl asked when he became such a good fighter that he could take down 6 men. Then she held up a recorder, and he asked why she had brought it. logistics chief to follow him. Running toward the target, the fighter warned the young man not to fall behind. As he leaped, he yelled again for the logistics chief to keep up. When he landed, he was faced with several creatures surrounding the vehicle in the parking lot. The monsters turned toward him, ready to attack. Pointing his weapon, the warrior ordered the creatures to back away from what belonged to the group and open fire. With a kick, he finished off the first enemy that had been hit by the shot. Next, he kept firing to eliminate the remaining threats. At the same time, he shouted for Song Chao to run and start the car immediately. Taking advantage of the cover, the young man sprinted toward the vehicle as fast as he could. Once inside, he prepared for the escape. Outside, the fighter kept holding back the creatures to secure the extraction. Just as the car was about to depart, a long-necked monster appeared at the driver's window. Startled, the young man reacted by aiming a weapon directly at the creature. Before he could shoot, the monster's head was severed by an energy blade. Smoke rose from Shen Zhuan's weapon after a precise shot. From her position at a distance, the commander revealed herself as the one who had saved Song Chao's life. Thus, Song Chao was stunned to realize that the commander had saved him. Right after he got into the car, his companion shouted for him to drive and get out of there. The vehicle's door lock was released for departure. The car then accelerated sharply, leaving the fallen monster behind. As the vehicle maneuvered through the yard, the commander eliminated the creatures that drew near. Seeing the warrior approaching, the young man shouted that he would stop the car for her to get in. She refused the help and ordered them to keep driving full speed without looking back. With a boost from her boots, the fighter leaped at the moment the car passed. The young woman landed precisely on the roof of the moving vehicle. Positioning herself firmly, she prepared to continue the fight. With a confident smile, the commander declared she would remain in the rear guard. Right after, a horde of mutants began chasing the car. Through the communicator, she informed the other groups that the objective had been secured. The message authorizing withdrawal was received by Le Jin and Rula. Finishing her orders, Shen Jiamei was instructed to use her coordinates to open a path through the wreckage. Inside the truck, the hooded doctor ordered everyone to get in so they could depart toward Linjiang. At that, one of the men mocked how the commander had just ordered them to blast open a path. Amid a massive explosion, the car sped forward with the warrior still on its roof. Even with debris falling, she stayed firm and alert to the surroundings. At the wheel, a young man kept driving at high speed along the escape route. Right behind, the armored truck broke through the fire barrier to rejoin the convoy. Inside the lead vehicle, the commander pointed ahead and shouted for everyone to advance. Finally reunited, the convoy of vehicles pressed through the ruined streets toward Linjiang base. As soon as they arrived, a woman in a white coat asked if they planned to move their nest back to Linjiang. The commander explained that it was only a temporary shelter, as she did not want the beast tide to bankrupt them. Even without anywhere to stay, she asked for shelter and was told that this was a private hospital, not an inn. By offering a crate of supplies, the doctor demanded meat and eggs and was called a thief. She then calculated the deal, establishing that one crate of supplies equaled 1 month's rent. Next, the woman noticed the car and asked what happened to it. Song Chao's vehicle was completely unrecognizable, with its bodywork and windows destroyed. Seeing the car's condition, the young man fell to his knees and began to cry in despair. The commander tried to downplay the damage, but he shouted that the vehicle was worth the same as tens of thousands of supplies. The revelation about the car's value left the warrior utterly shocked. Watching the two of them desolate on the ground, the doctor sarcastically remarked how they seemed to be having fun. Right after, she asked if the commander was certain about the arrival of the beast tide. Jing stated that, aside from their group, no one else had reported any sign of the monster's approach. The commander stared at her and asked if she was doubting her word. With a confident smile, she introduced herself as Shen Zhuan, making it clear her warning was serious. With absolute conviction, she declared that every movement in the western suburb was under her control, knowing even what the mutants would do. She then asserted with certainty that the beast tide would come, and that whoever doubted would pay the consequences. Faced with the threat, Jing only replied with indifference and turned away. Soon after, someone approached with a tablet, saying the intelligence department had found her to deliver a message. The commander turned her attention to the communication being displayed. The message informed that the city leaders had gathered to question her about the situation regarding the beast tide. While reading the message, Shen Zhuan called out to Song Chao, who responded without understanding the reason. Without preamble, she told him to accompany her to the meeting the next day, and the young man simply agreed. The commander explained that it would be a chance to introduce the team, and that the damaged car would be handed over to Midyu for repairs. Hearing the conversation, Sebejing questioned if she was truly prepared for what awaited her. The warrior admitted she had no choice but to go, as she couldn't handle one or two of the leaders on her own. Left by himself, Song Chao held the tablet and tried to make sense of everything happening around him. The next day, they arrived at the northern district of Linjiang, an area marked by futuristic buildings. The young man was impressed by the imposing architecture of the local base. He then asked why they were there instead of going directly to the meeting, and she explained that she needed a prior agreement with King Yan. Surprised, the young man wanted to know if it was the same King Yan she had clashed with in the past. The commander confirmed his suspicion without averting her gaze. With a tense expression, she admitted that the two of them had a complicated history. Soon after, they walked down a corridor with polished, gleaming floors. A receptionist in a skirt and blazer greeted them at the entrance. The woman informed Shen Jian that the minister was already waiting for her. The receptionist showed surprise that the visitor had come personally for the discussion. Calmly, the commander explained that a prior agreement with King Yan would prevent many future complications. The silver-haired woman affirmed that she perfectly understood her intentions. Soon after, the hostess asked them both to follow, receiving a word of thanks from the commander. As they walked, Song Chao whispered that the reception didn't seem as hostile as he had imagined. Shen Jian replied that in a way she could be considered an ally. The explanation left the young man even more confused about the situation. As soon as they reached the door, the receptionist announced to the minister that Miss Shen Jian and Mr. Song Chao had arrived. Right after, a voice from inside the room authorized their entry. Sitting with her back to the door, the hostess with long blonde hair called out the commander's name. Surprised, the young man realized at that moment that the dreaded King Yan was, in fact, a woman. Faced with the unexpected scene, the receptionist warned that the hostess was about to rush forward. One of the guards tried to restrain her, but she kept insisting on calling for Shen Jian. With a swift motion, the blonde freed herself from the guard's grasp. Then she leaped over the table toward the visitors. With arms wide open, she shouted the warrior's name once again. The minister declared that it had been so long since they had last seen each other. Next, she rushed forward, trying to embrace her. Without hesitation, the commander prepared a kick to intercept the charge. The strike landed squarely on the hostess's face. With the force of the impact, the woman was hurled backward as Shen Jian landed firmly. Seeing the commotion, the receptionist released an aura that enveloped her hands. In an instant, she launched an energy strike at the minister to restrain her. With the impact, the blonde cried out as she was thrown back once again. Immediately after, the assistant ordered that she be restrained. Completely frozen, Song Chao only listened to the request not to let the minister disgrace herself further. As she was held down by the guards, the blonde begged them to release her, pleading not to lose control in the presence of her true companion. Shen Jian limited herself to silently observing all the chaos. Meanwhile, the receptionist covered her face, not knowing how to handle her own superior. Outside the building, the shouts continued to echo through the city. Although tension lingered in the air, Shen Jian tried to justify the chaos, saying that the hostess had simply gotten carried away after seeing a friend she hadn't met in a long time. In turn, the receptionist lamented the scene, especially for not realizing there was an unfamiliar man present. Awkwardly, the young Song Chao apologized for the rudeness and said it was no problem. Now calmer, the blonde woman introduced herself as the head of the Linjing Census Department, one of the most powerful figures in the city. As she spoke, her body bound with ropes was revealed. Seated in the chair, she demanded to be released, but the receptionist told her to keep dreaming. Right after, the warrior decided to formally introduce the blonde to Song Chao. The head of the census department, Farah Rulin, was also the leader of a large organization responsible for the city's population control. Because of her cruelty and mercenary subordinates, she earned the nickname King Yan in the Palace of Hell. Upon hearing the explanation, the young man muttered that she was a pervert, irritating Shen Jian. Out of patience, the fighter said she hadn't come all this way to watch that scene and asked if they could go straight to the point. The hostess only lowered her head in silence. Next, the receptionist commented on how heartbreaking it was, while a rope of energy materialized. With that, the bindings were undone and the prisoner freed from the chair. Once standing, Rulin referred to her as her beloved childhood friend. Seated on the couch, the warrior directly asked what the hostess meant. Then she warned her not to stir up trouble about the beast tide during the afternoon meeting. From across the room, Rulin insisted that she was also responsible for the city's safety. The minister pointed out that, except for her group, no one else had reported the approach of the monsters. Still, the fighter stated that she would explain everything in the meeting, and that the beast tide would be massive. With disdain, the blonde commented on her self-confidence and asked if there was another reason for her visit. The warrior then revealed that she needed to purchase equipment and supplies directly from Rulin. The leader explained that she required special ammunition capable of piercing level 2 equipment and arming her team. Hearing the request, the hostess questioned whether she had the money to pay for it all. With a confident smile, the fighter simply confirmed that she could afford it. Still amid the tension, Shen Jian introduced Song Chao as the logistics officer of the flower shop and her new partner. Awkwardly, the young man introduced himself and listened as the leader explained that he had access to rare, high-quality products. The revelation piqued Rulin's interest. With a smile, the minister said she would wait to see for herself, while her assistant requested a supply list for the trade. Without hesitation, the warrior agreed to the terms. Right after, she stood up and stated that the remaining matters would be discussed in the afternoon meeting. The hostess and her aides simply watched the pair leave. After their departure, the assistant asked if her superior was certain about that decision. She then argued that by providing a supply channel, it would lose the chance to interfere in the western suburbs. Rulin replied that it didn't matter, since no other faction would allow the region to fall into third-party hands. She concluded further that it was more advantageous to maintain a good relationship with a new ally than to attempt seizing her territory. The minister then reflected that if the beast tide turned out to be real, Shen Zhaoan would use the crisis to consolidate her team's power. With that, Rulin ordered Mibo to pull back the troops and confirmed that the warning about the monsters was probably true. Left alone, the blonde thought about how complicated the whole situation was. Outside, the warrior remarked on how the minister never missed a chance to exchange a favor for a supply channel. At 4:30 p.m., the meeting began in Linjiang's central district. In a virtual conference room, one participant proposed that everyone reach a consensus about the beast tide. In response, the head of the census department, Farah Rulin, suggested a vote to decide whether they would trust Shen Zhaoan. The president of the Linjiang security group, Wei Yun, considered that although he understood her intent, there were no signs of a beast tide. Soon the head of the intelligence agency agreed, claiming that a small wave in the western district did not justify such mobilization. Ignoring their doubts, the warrior stated that the beast tide would be larger than they imagined and that she was there only to prepare, not to ask for their belief. The two men remarked that she still didn't care about anyone else's opinion. Disregarding the debate, Rulin enthusiastically declared that she had already decided to believe her completely. Out of patience, the fighter told Rulin to be quiet and admitted she understood the doubts, but reinforced that no one in Linjiang knew the mutants better than she did. She then proposed a wager to the intelligence chief. If she lost, she would open the western suburb to him, and if she won, he would reveal his true location. The hooded man called her a bastard, while Wei Yun noted that she seemed far too confident to make such a bet. With absolute certainty, the warrior confirmed that she was serious. Next, she admitted to Wei Yun that despite her flaws, she would never lie about Linjiang's safety and hoped they would trust her professional warning. Concluding her speech, she warned that they might not believe her, but they would have to face the consequences. With that, her holographic image began to fade from the conference room. The two leaders simply watched in silence as she disconnected. Despite the tension, the intelligence chief declared that he did not believe in a large-scale beast tide, preferring to trust data and analysis. Next, Wei Yun agreed, saying the problem was confined to the western suburb and that Linjiang's resources would not be used to assist her. Rulin listened to the other leaders' remarks in silence. Already disconnected, the warrior reacted with disdain to the intelligence chief's words. Returning to the meeting, she asked if she should interpret his statement as a personal insult. The hooded man immediately denied the accusation. With that, she admitted that for someone who trusted only in data, the situation indeed wasn't convincing. Soon after, she announced that Song Chao and Mibo would handle the supply purchase, surprising Rulin. Saying her farewells, the young woman told them she would see them in a few days and disconnected from the call. The fighter's chair in the virtual conference room was left empty. Wei Yun commented that aside from being confident in her judgment, she also seemed furious. Rulin then told the intelligence chief that she would not need such a pretext to take over the western suburb, and he defended himself by saying he had only spoken the truth. The man leaned forward and asked if the others were truly satisfied with the situation. Wei Yun reasoned that it would be very difficult to develop the western suburb without going through her. Agreeing, Rulin concluded that it was easier to cooperate than to waste energy on the issue, preferring to focus on her own territory. The intelligence chief insisted that the matter was the beast tide, accusing her of using the danger to mobilize Linjiang to her advantage. The minister reflected on the accusation, recalling that the warrior never acted without a major profit in mind. With that, she concluded that she didn't believe the warrior's plan was that simple. Back in her room, the fighter stretched calmly. Soon Shen Jiamai entered and called for her sister, who asked if there was any news. The young woman then reported that 80% of the Western teams were already on their way to provide support. Still confused, Shen Jiamai questioned why the people of Linjiang knew so little about the mutants. The warrior explained that the previous beast tides had probably given them a false sense of security. Meanwhile, in Xujing's private hospital communication room, the negotiation began. The trade list started with batteries and charging accessories for vehicles. Next came military nutritional solutions and various types of ammunition. The list also included several models of weapons and their respective rounds. Holding the device, Song Chao concluded the presentation of all the supplies they could offer in exchange. Meibo then agreed to prepare the trade. Regretting the absence of heavy weapons on the list, the young man extended his hand to seal the cooperation agreement. However, his hand passed straight through Meibo's holographic image. Startled, he quickly pulled back as he realized what had happened. Embarrassed, the young man apologized for forgetting she was only a projection, and the woman replied that it was no problem. Taking a seat, Meibo informed him that they would deliver the supplies to the flower shop the next morning for the exchange. The young man then said goodbye as the holographic image disappeared from the room. With the deal sealed, he concluded that despite the difficulties, the negotiation had been a success. Just as the conversation seemed to end, one of the men asked if the negotiation was already over. Right after, he and Li Jin commented to Song Chao that it looked like they had come out at a disadvantage in the deal. The young man then explained that it was a necessary measure and that, to him, those foods were not that precious. Surprised by the response, the two pointed out how reliable he was as a logistics officer. Reflecting on his role, Song Chao thought about how people in the modern world didn't possess the same fighting skills as they did. Suddenly, a voice asked what they were talking about. Shen Zhuan approached the group requesting to be included in any interesting subject. The blonde man explained that the young man had made a bad deal, leaving the leader confused. She turned to him and questioned him about the price chart she had given him. With that, the young man explained that he had only made a small concession to ensure the immediate delivery of supplies and to get help finding a store in Linjiang. The other man pointed out that the amount conceded wasn't even enough to cover rent at Dr. Xu's hospital. The warrior agreed that, thinking from that perspective, it was better not to worry about the details. Next, she asked Song Chao if they had spare food and ammunition. The young man confirmed that the supplies from the census department would arrive the next day and wanted to know the reason for the question. The leader then instructed him to prepare 4 portions of nutritional solution for the guests who would arrive tomorrow. She soon revealed that she had found some helpers, keeping the young man busy with trading resources among the groups. Meanwhile, Shen Zhuan constantly received visits from unknown and mysterious people. As time passed, the atmosphere around them grew increasingly tense. Then the threat finally arrived, starting in the western urban district. Soon, survivors fleeing the region informed the city guards that the beast tide had begun. In less than half a day, the census department in the northern district found rare mutants in the area and brought back corpses as proof. The carcasses of the creatures were presented to Mibo as evidence of the attack. While the leaders debated possible countermeasures, new information began to surface. An urgent report left the intelligence chief and his subordinate completely alarmed. In no time, the intelligence agency in the eastern suburb was attacked by a gigantic mutant. Even though many managed to escape, the losses during the assault were considerable. Finally, chaos reached the gates of the southern suburb. The wall guards were shocked when they spotted the approaching danger. Suddenly, a massive explosion struck the refugee camp. With the surprise attack, the disorganized camp instantly lost 2 of its slave quarters. The monster roared, baring its sharp fangs. Moments later, a colossal creature emerged amidst the flames, leading the horde as it advanced. In just 2 days, the number of dead and wounded had already reached the thousands. Completely shocked, the intelligence chief wondered how such a thing could have happened. Outside the city, the monster horde continued to gather, preparing for the final assault. Amid the crisis, a holographic call asked if he needed help. Shen Zhuan and Farah Rulin then appeared in the projection. To the man's surprise, irritated by their presence, he asked if the warrior had come to laugh at his misfortune. With a smile, she denied the accusation and said she was there to discuss serious matters. She soon added that whoever needed to laugh the situation had already laughed enough. With the beast tide already formed, the only option left was to face the threat. Rulin explained that the problem wasn't the lack of strength, but the low efficiency in eliminating the monsters, and the warrior asked for a solution. With one finger raised, the minister said she had a suggestion to resolve the deadlock. The other 2 leaders looked at each other, surprised by her proposal. Under the light of a red moon, the dark forest concealed new dangers. 3 mutant creatures moved stealthily through the vegetation. Soon the group found a metal container releasing smoke in the middle of the woods. One of the creatures approached the object and sniffed the air. Suddenly, several monsters around them began to roar in agitation. Moments later, one of them struck the container with its long tongue. The visor of one of the team members confirmed the movement of the targets. Observing the scene, Li Jin announced that the monsters had begun to move. From high in a tree, he reported that the horde was advancing toward the decoy box, much to Shen Zhuan's satisfaction. With that, the leader ordered them to hurry and deploy the new bait at the next location. Running through the forest, she shouted for everyone to follow her. As they advanced, Li Jin and the other warrior were surprised by the effectiveness of the plan. Shen Zhuan explained that they wouldn't have survived in the West without a few tricks. The device emitted specific sound waves and odors that generated a pheromone to attract mutants. Influenced by the lure, the monsters approached and devoured it. At times, the creatures even fought among themselves to compete for the object. By deploying a new decoy as soon as the previous one was destroyed, it was possible to guide the movement of the horde. The fighter then declared that this ingenious creation would become her trump card for competing with the other regions. Remembering the meeting, she repeated the word suggestion that she had heard earlier. The scene shifted back to the operations base, confirming the proposal. With a confident smile, she asked if the others didn't agree that concentrating the horde in one place would be advantageous for human firepower. The intelligence chief, however, questioned how they could control the movement of such a dispersed horde. The warrior then warned him about the danger of doing nothing, reminding him that the southern defenses could be easily abandoned, allowing the city to be overrun. Thus, Rulin remarked on how the warrior was resentful for using the situation to pressure the southern leaders. Then the intelligence chief questioned whether she had any guarantee that her plan would succeed. At that moment, Wei Yun's image reappeared in the meeting room. As president of the security group, he offered the necessary supplies provided she could draw 80% of the horde toward the southern part of the city. Right after, Rulin asked if the fighter was confident enough to secure such funding, and the young woman only smiled. Under the moonlight at a base, her answer was that there would be no problem. Thus, the strategist guaranteed she could guide most of the horde out of the southern city. The only condition she imposed was having enough material to produce the pheromone lures. Out in the field, she crouched down to speak with Le Jin. Then Shen Jiami added that she would use special channels to rally the scattered western teams during the mission. With enough teams in the field, they believed they could gather the main force of the beast tide. Next, a diagram illustrated how the lures would be used to attract and redirect the flow of monsters. The device released a signal that drew the creatures toward it. During the attraction process, the number of mutants would decrease due to internal conflict among them. Finally, the commander informed that she would meet with the Western survivors to organize the lure troops. With a handshake, she entrusted her new allies with responsibility for food and ammunition supplies. Thus, the nighttime operation began in the forest. Around a campfire, the leader confirmed that the number of people was sufficient for the mission. At that moment, the hooded man thanked everyone for trusting her and supporting the cause. One of the warriors present revealed his face, marked by scars and mechanical parts. With a determined smile, the young woman proposed to her Western compatriots an insertion operation to cross through the horde. The main plan was to use scout teams to guide most of the beast tide toward the southern city. Under her command, the squads moved and constantly deployed lures to alter the course of the monsters. Soon, one of the mutants approached the small glowing lure on the ground. When the number of monsters in a group was lower than expected, the teams took advantage and attacked. Thus, the warriors eliminated the creatures that strayed from the main horde. Each squad remained vigilant of the surroundings to ensure the mission's success. When encountering individually stronger creatures, several groups cooperated to carry out the lure work. The tactic proved effective even against the most gigantic and dangerous monsters. Each team member prepared for the next phase of the operation. Meanwhile, in the mountainous area of Linjiang's eastern suburb, a sniper commented that the target had appeared far too quickly. Moments later, a massive boar-shaped creature charged forward at high speed, raising a cloud of dust. In the forested area of Linjiang's eastern suburb, the night continued under the moonlight. Shen Jiami approached, worried about the operation, but the strategist replied that she had found something worthy of attention. Soon, the leader explained that up until 2 hours ago, the plan had been working perfectly, with the horde moving south. She then pointed to the map, showing that small hordes in the east were gathering unusually toward the mountains. The device displayed a large red alert over the area where the strategy was failing. Suddenly, Midio arrived, breathless, with a report from the mountain team, prompting the commander to question the situation. The young woman revealed that they had encountered the hybrid clan, leaving everyone completely shocked by the news. Not understanding the term, the other warriors listened as the hooded man explained it was their own designation. He reminded them of the ghouls to begin his explanation of the new threat. The warrior clarified that when mutants of that level gained power and intelligence, they formed tribes and were called hybrids. The explanation concluded that some hybrids evolved monsters into a personal guard, meaning they would face an enhanced army. With that, the others realized the situation was far more dangerous than a simple beast tide. The warrior with cybernetic parts stepped closer to the leader and asked what the next step would be. He then reminded her that everyone had placed their trust in her, and that now she needed to take responsibility and give the order. With no other choice, the strategist only questioned what else could be done in the face of the new reality. With her eyes fixed on the horizon, she decided the only option was to go there and deal with the problem directly. In the mountains, the lone sniper continued to monitor the area. Suddenly, a hand reached toward him. The warrior was startled as he was touched on the shoulder by surprise. Turning around, he found Shen Jian and asked about the current situation. Still shaken, the man asked her not to appear like that, and the leader apologized before questioning where the hybrid clan was. Regaining his composure, he pointed and informed her that the threat was about 2 kilometers away. Soon, the other team members arrived and spotted the creature in the distance. Before them, a massive monster walked through the forest with its followers. The creature revealed itself as a hybrid with huge tusks and a robust body. Immediately, the monster opened its mouth and let out a thunderous roar. Shen Jian then asked the sniper how many people they had, and he estimated about 50 fighters. The cyborg warrior questioned her about the plan, and she explained that they needed to eliminate the hybrid to unite the eastern forces with the main battlefield. Concluding the strategy, the commander ordered them to strike first to reduce the number of guards and retreat if the horde approached. Hey everyone, did you enjoy the story? I really liked it. If you want to follow the next part, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. See you in the next story, guys.